welcome to another series of videos for my YouTube channel. So I've been thinking of new projects that I could do, looking through images on the internet, giving myself some ideas, and this was the image that caught my eye and gave me some thoughts based on a World War I Dio. I've done a model before for World War I, set into a history book. I made some trenches, I added some equipment figures of the two opposing sides, two opposing lines. But as you can see in this photo, this one is a little different. We've got a duckboard system going through the mud, lots of broken trees, figures, shell holes, water, lost equipment, barbed wire, all that can be added and made into the detail. So that's where I am, and that's probably what I'll come up with and what I'll be working on from now. So there's obviously hundreds of images, videos on the internet to get some inspiration, get some ideas from, such as these. Ideally I wanted to incorporate a lot of mud and an expanse into this model. And ironically, 100 years ago right now was the Battle of Passchendaele, which was well known for its mud, water, and just generally dreadful conditions. So that's a starting point and something I can work from obviously from these images that you can see right now. Okay, so now onto the sets and the models and the kits that I'll be using. First off, I've came across this book that I bought some years ago, based on Passchendaele. It's got some great photos in there I can work from, including this one. You can see the troops going through on the duckboards with the mud and the water holes either side of them. So that's given me some ideas on the general debris of the battlefields. Similar to this one, again an aerial view this time, and just taking a picture of just the total destruction, all the shell holes, craters, broken trees. Again, I can use ideas from that, so that's a pretty good source of reference. The kits I'm going to use for the figures, both from Masterbox, British infantry and British German soldiers. You might notice that they're both from the Somme period, 1916, whereas this one will be set in Passchendaele in 1917. But I'm not too fussed about that, because the kits and the figures suited what I was going to use really nicely. There's 11 kits, 11 figures in total. I'm going to use these 6 for sure, walking down the duckboards, and then probably 3 of these 5 incorporate into a small outpost on the one side. Fill that up. In fact, actually, here is a couple of the figures that I've made already, one from each kit. I've just mixed and matched a few bits of the equipment and a couple of the heads. Normally I would use hornet heads for many of my figures, but because of where this diorama will be placed, this model will go, I'm more than happy just to use the heads from the original sets. The outposts, as I just mentioned, will be made up from this, including this cart. I saw this image and thought that it was quite a good source. The cart itself will be broken up into 2 or 3 pieces and spread throughout the battlefield. So again, more detail. And then the title of the piece itself is taken from this movie, famous World War I war film, All Quiet on the Western Front, and I've just taken the first 2 words for the title, All Quiet, and that'll be, the rest of it will be explained in a moment, become quite obvious. And then where the model is going to go, normally I would use something like this photo frame or a wooden base with plastic built up around the sides, and the model will go in this space here. But for this one I want to do something a little bit different, something unusual, and so the model will go from here to here. So the idea being, the model of the Passchendaele battlefield will be placed under one side of the coffee table underneath the glass panel. What I've done is I bought some just normal skirting board, cut it up to size. I've already placed a couple of pillars either side here to help me square it off. And then these pieces will just be simply glued underneath. As such, the box off, as you imagine underneath, will box off the square, and the model will be placed underneath. And we've also set up a little bit of lighting down across one side, so the model will be displayed with a bit of light at night also. So the pieces of wood, once they're glued in place, I'll just stain them with a colour that'll come quite close, hopefully, to the sides of the table and the actual table itself. Obviously just to take away the harshness of the clean wood and just to blend in a little, even though it's not going to match totally. But it should give it a nice finish. So now onto the model itself. This is approximately the size, it will be the size of the glass panel, just a little bit smaller. And then going through it from the bottom, the brown holes will be shell holes, roughly that many, dotted around the battlefield, with the duckboards going, forming a path from top to bottom. There'll be approximately 9 figures from the 2 master box figure sets, with potentially maybe one from Tamiya. If I get some, we'll just see how that one goes, but initially it'd just be the 9. The upturned cart on the right hand side here will be replicated from this photo that I found. It's quite a nice source, so if I could copy that, that would look quite cool. The path of duckboards would lead up to here, which would be a broken bridge taken from this image that I found. Add a little bit more detail to the model. The Mark IV tank will be from Tamiya. When I saw this picture, I thought that would be quite a good scene, that the tank has been ditched and damaged and left there. And so now on to the figure sets. The first set will be from Master Box, of the German prisoners being escorted back by the British soldiers. So this will be the first little group, the British soldier here with the 2 Germans carrying the third, and then further down the duckboards would be the second 2 making their way back. The second set, again from Master Box, would be these guys, and they would be behind the shattered cart to the right. 2, maybe 3 at the most of those figures. As you probably noticed, both of those are from the Somme, which was a year before this would have been set. This was set in 1917, the Somme in 16. But I really like the figures, so I'm happy to use them. As I mentioned, a little bit further up, I might be a third British soldier, but I'll see how that one goes in one of the shell holes. A lot of this terrain will be very uneven. It won't be flat. But now I've got the plan made. I've now gone on to make the actual start the actual build itself. This is obviously where the tank will go. The duckboards will go through here. This is where the broken bridge will be, and the carts, the smashed carts with the officers, would be here. So all I have to do now is begin to build this up, and to do that, all I'm going to do is get some use some paper mache with some tissue and some thin white glue, and then start building the terrain, some of it higher than others. And since the original plan, I've decided I'm going to have a little bit of a road here. This would have been the original road, banked up again with paper mache, and then eventually with plaster. So it won't be quite so obvious, the 2 layers, but it's to give me some idea as how I want this to be. So the next stage will be now to start using the paper mache. Okay, so we've started making some progress with the terrain. As you can see, I've made a wooden frame box for the model to sit into, and this has been measured up and slides in between the 2 wooden pillars of the table, so that the model can be accessed, taken out easily enough. You can also see the layers of the foam board that I used to build up the groundwork. And then simply what I've done to build up some of the sides and some of the higher ground, I used some of the cardboard cutouts that I had from the shell holes and just placed those, glued them on, and built up a little bit of higher ground around by the road and where the bridge will be. And then simply covered all that completely with strips of tissue paper, just applying some wood glue to the paper. Paper glue rather, not wood glue, PVA glue with a little bit of water, and just glued this over and let it dry for a day or so. If I lift this up, maybe you could perhaps see a little bit better, since it's all sprayed black now, just to give me an even colour on the terrain. Start plastering on. This will be the size of the duckboards roughly. They'll be side by side running along here, parallel along here. One set going out to the bridge, and a second set coming this way. This area here would be where the upturned cart will be, and some of the officers. surrounded obviously by the shell holes. The Mark IV tank, this is quite big, this hole. It won't be so big. It's just to fit the tank into, and then everything else will be plastered over. The tank will be just set off the roads at a tilt, and like I say, the duck boards would just run along through here with most of the figures through the centre and a couple down here. So the next job will be, now everything is now got a good base to it, I can start plastering and adding some proper terrain and effects to the mud. Okay, so I finished off the 9 figures of the 11 that were in the kit. Most of them were built straight from the box art. One of them I just altered some of their clothing to mix and match them up a little bit more. And I made a few changes to these 3 here. This was quite difficult to initially put together, to get the 3 all in line with the hands and everything. At one point almost just left the middle one out and had the two just holding hands walking down the duck boards, but eventually I got them all on together. And what I've done is I've added a couple of hornet heads to these 2 to add a little bit more of a feature, and also added some bandages here which will be signifying an abdominal wound, again just to add a little bit more detail. But all in all, they all came together pretty well, quite nicely, and now they're ready just to have a little bit of filler in some places and to prime them ready for painting. I've also started on some trees for the groundwork. Simply what I've done with these is just got some twigs from outside in the woods nearby, and then using a couple of books as reference to help me create some of the battle damage, just using clay, created some bark for the trees, leaving the top parts that have been blasted away, the original wood, the original twig colour, and then this bark here will be painted in various tones. These parts at the bottom will be planted into the ground to signify some battle damaged trees. I've done these few at the moment, and I'll be building making a few more, so there'll be a few scattered around the terrain. So what I'm going to begin doing now for the last part of this video is to start to add a little bit of the plaster onto the boards, using just some powder filler mixed with some water and some different coloured tones of paints, some dark browns and blacks, to give me a base coat for the actual groundwork itself, for the mud. And then whilst that's wet, I can start planting some duck boards.